Hello, good morning. You've tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. I'm Vinny Motiwala. With me is Mamakshi Dore as well. Mamakshi, a very good morning to you. But today we have Nifty expiry, so we're expecting a bit of volatility coming in and will be important to check on the markets today.
Well, absolutely, Vinny. You know, we had a decent run in the trading session yesterday. Today, of course, being the expiry, so we cannot rule out any more volatility going forward in the market. But, you know, there's a lot lined up on the show. Let's get started.
Absolutely. Let's get started, and we'll get started with the top headlines for today, and starting with Wall Street, because that ended sharply lower with Dow ending over 800 points in the red. S&P 500 and the Nasdaq also saw a sharp cut as Treasury yields jumped. President Trump's tax bill and earnings from retailers weigh on the sentiments.
Stocks in the Asia-Pacific region also opened lower, mirroring Wall Street's moves. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a weak start for the Indian market.
Oil prices ease after Oman's foreign minister said a fresh round of nuclear talks between Iran and the United States would take place later this week. Meanwhile, a weaker dollar and geopolitical uncertainties push gold to a one-week high.
IndusInd Bank reports a net loss of over 2,300 crore rupees, a first in 20 years for the bank, as accounting issues and MFI stress weigh. Management says they hope to start FY26 on a clean slate without carrying forward any of the past issues.
And in key earnings today to watch out for, numbers from ITC where 4 to 5% growth is expected in cigarette volumes. In other important earnings, Sun Pharma's Q4 revenue is expected to grow at 9%. Also keep an eye on the numbers from Grasin. On that note, let's look at how the Asian markets have opened up this morning. Doesn't seem like the handover is good. So Asian markets also seem like they've opened up in the red as well. Taiwan index is down 0.6%. We're seeing that the Hang Seng, that's down 0.5% as well. So Asian markets have opened up muted. Shanghai is trading quite flat. Just a slight bit of a positive bias, 0.03% is what I checked the last time. Let's look at the Nifty implied open. Yesterday, we did close 0.5% higher in terms of the Nifty. Today, as of now, is indicating a 54-point decline. So that will be interesting to watch out for where the market is headed. Do not forget there is Nifty expiry as well. A lot of earnings that we're seeing, the last leg of earnings that we'll be seeing coming in as well, Mamakshi. But as of now, negative bias is what is indicated for the Nifty, and a red start is what we're watching.
Well, absolutely, Vinny. You know, the handover that came in from Wall Street was also not quite promising. We saw a rise in the Treasury yields on the deficit concerns. And, you know, in the US market, Wall Street ended largely lower. The Dow Jones slid more than 800 points, while the S&P 500 finished the day 1.6% low, and the Nasdaq lost almost 270 points. CNBC's Peepa Stevens gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets saw a steep decline on Wednesday amid pressure from a spike in Treasury yields as traders grew worried the new U.S. budget bill could put even more stress on the country's already large deficit. The Dow falling 817 points, the S&P slipping 96 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq shedding 270 points. OpenAI said on Wednesday it is buying artificial intelligence devices from Johnny Ive's startup IO for $6.4 billion. In the statement, OpenAI said the legendary former Apple designer will take on creative and design responsibilities across the company, while his creative collective called Loveforn will stay independent. I've had a hand in Apple's most iconic products, including the iPod, iPhone, iPad, and MacBook Air. The purchase is OpenAI's largest by far, and it comes a week after the company agreed to buy AI-assisted coding tool Windsurf for $3 billion. And demand for mortgages in the U.S. dropped in the past week as interest rates jumped to their highest level since February. The average rate on a 30-year fixed loan increased to 6.92%. The Mortgage Bankers Association says investors are concerned about rising inflation and the impact of higher deficits and debt. Applications to refinance a home loan also fell, as rates are now nearly the same as they were a year ago. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Thank you so much for that. But let's also listen to Kate Moore, CIO at Citi Wealth, talking about the U.S. market and how the tariffs affect the economy.
When you look at the aggregate earnings revision ratios, they're pretty low, many more cuts than there were upgrades. At the same time, the only places you were seeing upgrades were in tech and comms. And that's what I'm really talking about, is that most of the earnings are coming from these really concentrated places, and yet the entire market was rallying as if we're going into an expansion. We've been past this point of maximum tariff shock, but not anywhere close past the point of tariff pain. In fact, we haven't even really felt it yet. So, yeah, we've had this incredible round trip in terms of risk assets. People have been more sanguine. They put risk back on. But that wasn't broad-based, right? We saw some segments of the investment community stay more on the sidelines or hold their allocations. And frankly, at City Wealth, we've been on that camp too, where we've been more neutral equities, rotating into the higher quality parts of the equity market.
So that's all the global market action that we have for you this morning. But how is all this going to be impacting our Indian markets? We have a team of research here to set you up for trade, tell you which are the important stocks to watch out for, as well as the cues in the world of F&O. First up, we'll go across to Vivek, who's waiting by to tell us what are we watching out for today, given that it's expiry day today. What are the cues coming in, Vivek? Good morning.
Well, good morning. This Thursday, it's expiry day as well. Like you rightly mentioned, kind of cues that we are working with are slightly muted, given the kind of sell-off that you've been highlighting since the start of the show as far as the US markets are concerned. The spike in treasury yields and the low demand over there is something that equity markets got quite spooked by. Now, coming to the oil markets, oil markets too fell. In fact, Brent yesterday was down a little over 0.5%, now hovering around the $65 a barrel mark. Now, coming to Indian markets, remember day before yesterday, especially in the last hour and a half of the trading session, saw significant selling pressure. But yesterday, the markets managed to recoup most of the losses that they saw in yesterday's, day before yesterday's trading session. And in fact, all of the indices managed to trade with strong gains and managed to end the day with strong gains, which was also quite important. Now, when you're looking at the advanced decline ratio, was firmly in favor of the bulls or in favor of the gainers, and that is something that the market as well as the bulls will take quite a lot of heart from. What recovered and what did well? Well, the entire pharma pack, defense stocks, railway stocks, and also capital goods, especially some of the capital goods names like Siemens, Cummins, were among the top gainers in yesterday's trading session. Whole host of results reactions coming by: ONGC, Colgate, Vatek, Wabak, some of the names that will react to results today. If Nifty, Asian markets all indicating a muted start for our markets today.
Well, thank you so much for that, Vivek. Now over to Upasna, who will list out the stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. Good morning, Upasna.
Good morning, Vamakshi. First up, let me start with IndusInd Bank. The company has reported a weak quarter this time around. The net losses stand as high as 2,328 crore versus a profit of 2,349 crore. When we talk about NII, it is down about 43%, and asset quality has also worsened from 2.25% to 3.3% in terms of the GNPA ratio of the bank. Now, coming to Mankind Pharma, the revenue growth was largely in line, led by domestic and export market. Revenue up 27%, margins stood at 22% versus 24% on a YoY basis. Interglobe Aviation is the another stock on our counter. The profits were mainly aided by the operational performance of the company. Net profit up 62% and revenue up 24% on a YoY basis. Colgate will also be in focus as the profit is down 6.5%, revenue down about 2%. Weak set of numbers, certainly. Margin at 34% versus 35.7% on a YoY basis. Now, Nalco will also be in focus as companies perform solid performance from both the segments, that is alumina and aluminium. The revenue saw a sharp growth of 47% on a YoY basis. Even PAT saw a growth of 47% at 1,470 crore. ONGC will also be in focus. The company has reported higher revenue as compared to the poll, and the higher exploratory cost boosted the earnings of the company. Now, profit was down 22% sequentially and revenue was up 4% sequentially. RVNL will also be in focus. The net profit was down 4%, but revenue was also down about 4.3%. Margins stand stable at 6.7% with a downtick of just about 10 basis points on a YoY basis. NBCC will also be in focus on the back of the order win. The company bags order worth 162 crore from Power Finance Corp. And lastly, Hindustan Zinc will also be in focus as the company gets an LOI for a block in Andhra Pradesh. So all in all, these are the stocks that we'll be watching out for today.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Upasna. Keep an eye out on all the stocks. But what is going to be happening in the world of F&O, I beg your pardon. Mangalam is here to give us those details. Good morning, Mangalam.
Good morning. So, yesterday was moved towards equilibrium for the market. Why do I say that? Because previous Thursday, the big up move that we saw And, 2 days ago, the big down move that we saw in the last hour of trade were both on the extreme side. The range for the Nifty is 24,600 to 25,000 itself. And that exactly what played out yesterday as well. We came back to moderate zones for our market. The high and the low on the Nifty yesterday tells you the broad range that the street should be working with. The good part, the FIs came back to buying after 10,000 crores of selling in the previous trading session. 2,200 crore worth cash purchase. The DIIs topped it up with another 700 crores as well. In index futures, there was a mild purchase by the FIs, 201 crores. They added about 500 long contracts, covered 600 short contracts. And as a result of which, their long exposure over the last couple of trading sessions stays steady at 37%, though the net contracts have come down on the short side by about 1,000 contracts at 37,500. The put-call ratio, which was again at an extreme of 0.69, has now moderated back again to 0.81, and that brings us to the important levels that we are watching out for today. 24,900 call shed some open interest, and we saw 24,800 put shed some open interest as well, or add some contracts. So the broad range that the option writers are positioned for today in terms of expiry would be 24,700 to 2550 on the Nifty. For the Nifty Bank, it is the 20-day moving average, which moves as an important fulcrum as a support. The stocks that I'm watching out for, Titagar, we had spoken about, it entering F&O ban at midday yesterday, and that has happened. It's re-entered F&O ban after exiting it yesterday itself. And then a bunch of stocks which will be excluded from F&O trading come August series include the likes of Aarti Industries, Hindustan Copper, which has been in the ban for a very long time, Birlasoft, MGL and Piramal Enterprises. These are stocks that come out of F&O trading from August series 2025.
Well, thank you so much for that, Mangalam. Let's slip into a short break now. Up next, we get you a review of IndusInd Bank's Q4 numbers. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. IndusInd Bank is the one that is in focus. The company reported its Q4 earnings. We now have Abhishek joining us with the fine print. Not a great set this time around, Abhishek.
It's the worst result in the banking sector that you have seen in Q4 FY25 across various parameters. Now, what's exactly gone wrong? Not only is the P&L under stress, but take a look at the corporate book that's declined more than 15% on a sequential basis, and that's not an easy factor to build in back again. So it will be a tough, road ahead for them with respect to, if they intend to build the corporate portfolio. The NII decline of more than 43% YOY and about 42% sequentially is the highest decline that you are seeing in the banking sector. The net interest margin is the lowest ever for them, coming in at 2.25% versus 3.93% in the previous quarter. Now, other income is one of the lowest on a quarterly basis in last 39 quarters. Other income was down 71.7% YOY and about close to 70% sequentially, the highest decline that they have ever seen. This is the only bank to report an operating loss in Q4 FY25. So, highest net loss in the banking sector as well, coming in at more than 2,300 crores for Q4 FY25 in the banking sector. Slippages were really elevated at more than 5,000 crore versus 2,200 crores. So, the annualized slippage ratio is one of the highest that you are seeing in last 16 quarters, coming in at 5.8% versus 2.4% in the previous quarter, largely led by the MFI or the microfinance portfolio. Gross NPA ratio is the highest in last 10 years or even more, coming in at 3.13% versus 2.25%. Net NPA ratio is the highest in 21 quarters, coming in at 0.95% versus 0.68% in the previous quarter. The risk weight to advances ratio, that's increased massively, and it's at the highest in last 11 quarters, coming in at close to 121.6% when compared to 114.6% in the previous quarter. And the bank has used entire contingent provision of 1,325 crore in this quarter. So the P&L, massive miss on our poll, both on the NII front as well as the loss front. Back to you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Abhishek. But following the earnings call, the bank's chairman, Sunil Mehta, addressed the media about the bank's recent discrepancies seen in its books and what steps the bank plans to take to rectify them. Listen in.
Based on review of all these matters and reports received by the board suspects the occurrence of fraud against the bank and the involvement therein of certain employees having a significant role in the accounting and financial reporting of the bank. Accordingly, the bank has directed necessary steps to be taken under applicable law, including reporting to regulatory authorities and investigative agencies, and to also fix accountability of all persons responsible for these lapses. The financial impact of all the above has been fully taken in the audited financial statements of the bank for the financial year 2024-25. The bank's approach towards financials has been to start FY 25-26 on a clean slate without carrying forward any of the past issues. The bank has thoroughly reviewed all the lines of accounting and has taken a conservative view in some of the accounting treatments. Following the findings of external review announced on 27th of April 2025, the bank's CEO and Deputy CEO had resigned from their respective roles thereafter. The RBI has advised the bank to submit proposals for appointment of the new CEO for RBI's approval by 30th June 2025. The board is at an advanced stage in the selection process and is confident that the recommendations will be submitted to the RBI in advance of the timeline prescribed.
Well, on that note, let's slip into a very short break. Up next, we get you cues from the commodities market. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now let's move on and now getting you the latest on Trump-related developments. We have Dia joining in with us in our special segment, Trump Watch.
Starting off with a striking statement from US President Donald Trump that is making headlines this morning. President Trump once again repeated his claim that he settled the recent conflict between India and Pakistan through trade. This was during his White House meeting with South African President. Let's listen to what he said.
If you take a look at what we just did with Pakistan and India, we settled that whole thing, and I think I settled it through trade. We're doing a big deal with India, we're doing a big deal with Pakistan, and I said, what are you guys doing? You know, somebody had to be the last one to shoot, but the shooting was getting worse and worse, bigger and bigger, deeper and deeper into the countries. Pakistan has got some excellent people and some really good, a great leader. And India is my friend, Modi. And he's a
mutual friend.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And I called them both, and we just did something good.
President Trump on Tuesday said his massive tax package is close to being finalized, having notched a deal over the state and local tax deduction. But the White House is yet to win over a faction of conservatives who want more austere spending cuts. House Republican leaders are also reportedly planning to accelerate new Medicaid work requirements to December 2026 in a deal with ultra-conservatives on the tax bill. Turning to tech policy, the Trump administration will maintain efforts to keep advanced artificial intelligence technology out of China's hands, a top White House official said, brushing off calls from NVIDIA Chief Executive Officer Jensen Huang to ease restrictions on chip exports to the world's second-largest economy. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to halt a judge's order that would force it to answer questions from a watchdog group and turn over documents about Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency in a fight over public access to the office's records. Now, lastly, the Defense Department formally accepted a luxury Boeing 747-8 jumbo jet from Qatar to temporarily serve as the new Air Force One for President Donald Trump, one of the biggest foreign gifts ever given to the U.S. government. Now that's all for today. Back to you.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dia. But moving on then, Manisha Gupta is now joining us with all the updates from the world of commodities. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, and thank you for that. Well, when it comes to commodities, we've seen stronger gains overnight, especially when it comes to the precious metal as a space. You have gold prices now trading at around 1 week highs. The soft US dollar, safe haven demand, economic and geopolitical uncertainty, all of that seems to be supporting prices. Not just gold, silver is trading at a 3-week high. There's a strong buying from China and European Union for silver for the solar industry that has been supportive. And then we're also looking at copper prices holding rebound. HRC steel prices are trading at a 4-week high. The best of the gains, though, have continued for platinum. That one is trading at a 51-week high, and we've seen prices gain up by 13% in the past month. The only area that I see a bit of a decline working in is the crude oil prices. The U.S. crude inventories have increased. We've also seen a sell-off in the U.S. equity markets, and that weighs onto the market. But the headline today clearly comes in from Bitcoin. It's up 15% in May until now and trading at an all-time highs above $110,000.
Okay, Manisha, thank you so much for that. All-time high levels coming in for Bitcoin. We'll keep an eye out on that. But let's move on. And Delhi has witnessed intense thunderstorm last evening that impacted flight operations, metro services, caused traffic snarls, as well as uprooted trees and damaged vehicles. Power outages were also reported as electricity lines were also impacted. The metro services were affected too as the heavy wind and debris damaged the overhead wires and tracks. While airlines also faced major stumbling block with 12 flights being diverted to Jaipur and 1 to Mumbai.
Well, in another news flow, an Indigo flight going from Delhi to Srinagar with more than 250 passengers on board experienced strong turbulence as it navigated through an unexpected hailstorm that damaged a small portion of the aircraft yesterday. In a press statement issued, the flight and cabin crew followed established protocol and landed safely in Srinagar. The aircraft would also be released post necessary inspection and maintenance.
And with that, we'll wind down this edition of Our Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much from Mamakshi, myself, as well as the team who put this show together. But don't go anywhere. Up next, your Bazaar Morning Call to take you through all the market action.